hours. If you use Bactine medicated skin cream morning and night, it really pays off.
Get set.
That was a pretty good fight for a change. What was it? Blueberry tang?
Yeah, blueberry. First contest, kid? Follow me. This is Alka-Seltzer. Gets rid of that stuffy feeling. When you've been on the circuit as long as I have, you'll know. See you around, kid.
Next time you overeat, take what the guys who overeat for a living take. Alka-Seltzer.
Men, nothing takes it off like Noxema medicated shave. Take it off. Take it all off. Nothing takes it off like Noxema medicated shave.
The closer you shave, the more you need Noxema. Noxema medicated comfort shave.
Come to where the flavor is. Come to Marlboro Country.
She got that sweet juice, Minute Maid, some of out that lemonade. Take a sip, blowing purple clouds, taste like lemon haze. Conversations back and forth like damn, we could go on for days. Looking back at it like damn, she bad when she walk away. Here we go, been down this road, they already know. When we go on tour, I'll take you anywhere you wanna go. People talk about us like they understand just what this is. I just wanna give you all you want and then the double it. They all say I'm way too young, maybe I'm just ignorant. I won't find nobody like you on some real shit. Spend a couple hours on the phone. Hey, I don't wanna let you go. I'll be all about you, babe. I'll be all about you, babe. Saying so unless you don't know, they won't find what we got in that.
You have lost your mind. Homosexuality should be a crime. They ought to take all the homosexuals and put them all on a boat and give them enough gas to get halfway out in the middle of the ocean and let the sharks eat them. So So there's no way to stop me. There's no way to stop the truth. This isn't preaching, this is hate speech. It's both! Because we can purge out all the sissies and purge out all the fair weather Christians, purge out all the weaklings. Because we're supposed to be treating them lovingly and respectfully. Even though the Bible says they're filthy and vile. I mean, so don't act like I'm all alone up here. Some of you thumbed up some of those comments too, didn't you? I'm just saying, look, you know, hey.
As you can see, we've had our eye on you for some time now, Mr. Anderson.
I don't believe for 1 second that I am the only one smart enough to pick up the Bible and figure out that we're not supposed to mourn when homosexuals die.
One of these lives has a future, and one of them does not.
So what? So what?
So let's just do a quick check. Let's make sure that none of our Bibles have been tampered with.
I just take pleasure in their death. God has darkened their heart and blinded their eyes. Look, if God darkens your heart and blinds your eyes, you can't believe. You can't believe. Washing our feet in the blood of the wicked in the New Testament. I'm starting to just realize the uncomfortable truth. Who here really struggles hard to be a homo? I mean, it's really hard. And you know what? These people are going to be burning in hell for all eternity. The victory is theirs. It's not ours. They've already won. We've already lost. It's already been written. We've already read the last chapter. And we know
I don't love God.
Live from Sacred Death Studios in Los Santos, San Andreas. Welcome everyone to Late-Night Counter-Apologetics. And now, please welcome your host. He is the wise man of the Sacred Death Motorcycle Club. He is the sexiest man in all of word wrestling entertainment. He is the most entertaining man in the history of evolutionary biology. He is the virtual visionary, Mr. Dual PhD himself. Please give it up for the architect of the atheist apocalypse, the only man to have his vestments blessed by Pine Creek, the most high apostle of the cult of the Flying Man. He is none other than the Outlaw Prince, the one and only Jesus who can save us, Dr. Heartbreak J. Pocketlocker Bundy! I think I'm cute. I know I'm sexy. I've got the look that drives the girls wild. I got the moves that really move them. I send chills up and down their spines. I'm just a sexy boy. Are y'all ready for the after party? Oh my goodness, I am hyped. I had fun doing that show. Rob is boring as shit. Mike Winger's a fucking idiot. Let's play some games. I make them hot. I make them shiver. Their knees get weak. Whenever I'm around, they see me walk. They hear me talk. I make them feel like they're on cloud nine. 'Cause I'm a sexy boy. Woo! You don't got one of those. Your ministering game not official like me. I got a robe, I got a bell, I got a tambourine, I got the golden plate.
Eat your heart out, girls. Hands off the merchandise.
I mean, to be honest with y'all, I'm really not fucking around. I mean, it's kind of this game's kind of serious right now.
I'm just a sexy boy.
Sexy boy. Oh yeah. Gotta get the biker cut on. Gotta represent for Satan.
I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy.
Welcome to the after party, folks. You know, when you're really trying to grow out here as a content creator, you got to get your community used to the routine, okay? And when you just do a show, and the show's good, it's a nice little couple hours, nice little program, little musical beginning, little commentary. All right, we having a good time, but we just getting revved up. And then what happens? They just end the show, and then you just be like, well, wait, we was just getting used to it. You know, so you got to get the folks used to the late night crew. That's not how the late night crew gets down. Okay, when the late night crew does a show, we always follow up with the after party. Sometimes the show is just the beginning, and the after party might be all night. You know, that might be how it goes. I don't know how long this after party will be. I don't really have a time. I have to go to bed, but I do want to get some sleep and eat some foodies. But right now, I kind of want to stream. I kind of want to play games and do some fun stuff. So let's see what I can get fired up for us over here. All right, cool. We got us a little scene over here. We got my man Gin and Truth. Actually, I want to listen to the podcast he did today or the other day. I'll go with today, and if you guys want to listen to the older one, well, yeah. Which one do y'all want to listen to? I don't know. YouTube Punk just sent me a link. Let's see what's on that.
In my part of the world, the
American
South,
I actually like Drew.
there exists
I'm down with this.
Pervasive belief that many, if not most people, have.
Hang on a sec. Let me put on some. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to put on music because I think I'm going to play the game. I think I'm going to play a game. So let's rock with this.
The gospel. People in our
and then I'm over here.
Christian cities here love to put
let's see if we can get some games going, y'all.
As if anyone driving past will be surprised
before I
to
do
learn
that,
this
before I do that,
named Jesus.
If anybody's watching this or y'all watch later, this channel got to over 200 subs, and I don't want to get too emotional about it, but hold on, let me tell y'all some real shit. They say we tell our stories as content creators, and also I hear this a lot as a black scientist. They're like, Jay, listen, I know you're doing some really important work, but you got to tell your story. You know, people really need to hear your story. And I'm like, what? Yeah, my story. Got you, heard you, got you. No, I really do appreciate that. But listen, folks, as a content creator, I started out on Twitch years ago. And I built my little stream up from nothing and started with just a couple of kids in our little fantasy wrestling that we were doing with WWE games and just calling wrestling matches and having fun with a few of my young homies. And, it kind of grew. And I remember I was in like the affiliate program, and I remember crying when I finally got to the affiliate program because it meant that I'd finally consistently had like 3 people watching me. It was just cool, and we did our thing, and I got to like, I don't know, 150 subs or something like that, and maybe even more. And then I like
took a long time off because I had to like finish grad school, and it was really tough, and it was hard to like, you know, balance the time to stream like I was. And I kind of was having like an all or nothing mentality. It's like if I couldn't stream as much as I wanted to, I wouldn't like stream at all. And that was a bad mentality. But, you know, grad school fucks with your head, and you got to just survive that shit. But I survived, and I started popping up on YouTube after that because, you know, I was really getting heavily invested in like the atheist counter-apologetics community. And a bunch of those people were like, hey, you should make content. Where's your content on your channel? And I was like, oh yeah, I should do that. So anyway, to make a long story short, I had lost a lot of my Twitch followers because I like wasn't, you know, people unfollow you or whatever on Twitch because, you know, they're looking for your stuff and you're not making any stuff. And so my follower count went down. And for a long time, I was putting stuff on YouTube, but then my Twitch viewers were having a hard time finding me. And the motivation for changing all those platforms was to get back to multi-platform streaming so I could be live on Twitch and YouTube at the same time. And so I really feel great about being in a position where my YouTube family and my friends are all able to find my stuff and enjoy my streams and my videos. And people have started finding me on Twitch again. Our follower count has started to grow back again, and sort of reaching that 200 follower mark. I know that probably doesn't sound like a crazy number to a lot of people, but for me, it really does represent sort of getting back to it, recapturing some of my lost momentum, and also really helps me feel like all of those choices I made, which were a lot of work, to be honest with you guys, and not just a lot of work on me, but also my co-host and the people like No Name who helped me make my content and stuff. But I really sold those guys on the fact that it would be worth it. And so those little kind of achievements that you get along the way, my little YouTube achievements and these kind of Twitch milestones. I think soon Hot Program will celebrate 100 followers. I think the Jay Bundy channel will be not too far behind it to reach 100 followers. And so I'll be really, really celebrating those things. And so I just wanted to say thank you for all you guys' support. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, let's get into this video, and I'll find some games to play.
Despite this odd belief, the story of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection may actually be the most widely known story in all of Western culture today. Christian or not, you've probably been at least somewhat familiar with this story since childhood. Jesus was a wise teacher.
I'm trying to think of what that app is
who
called.
taught people to repent of their sins,
that's what it's called.
love their neighbor, and seek God. He ended up getting crucified, but was said to have risen from the dead 3 days later. That's the gist that most Westerners know.
Yeah, I guess we can go with
there
X.
is a lot more, some of which has been purposely hidden from public view for more than a millennium because it ran contrary to the favored interpretation of those teaching the story in the first place.
By the way, I just want to say that I really love this guy's content. And I really think that content like genetically modified skeptics, I think his content plays an important role in what I think of as sort of like the progression of atheism. And I'm going to try to explain this and see if it makes any sense to you guys. If it doesn't, just tell me I'm bullshitting, and that's fine. I don't care. Like, I think when you first get into this, right? Like, at least for me, maybe if you're weird or intellectual or something, maybe you find like the debates or like the lectures first. Maybe you find people like Dawkins or Hitchens, or you're reading some stuff or whatever. But I think it quickly gets to a point where, like I kind of said before, you get kind of tired of the debates and the whatever else. And I think maybe for a lot of people, that part of the progression is completely cut off. Like, I think if you're not a person who's like really, you know, into debates and intellectual culture, you're probably like not even gonna start there, right? For somebody like me, when somebody comes to me, I've had this happen in real life, people who are sort of transitioning out of Christianity. I certainly wouldn't recommend that they start with my channel because it's way over the edge. And not even really meant to be like a substantive, you know, thing. It's meant to be, you know, fun and entertainment for a community that is already kind of into this stuff. But for people that are like sort of, I'm trying to like you know, they're really coming out of Christianity, or maybe they're in Christianity still, but they're thinking about coming out of it. And I'm trying to like recommend some content to them that will like help them deal with some issues in a way that's really digestible, really approachable, but also really good, and is going to really get at the heart of a lot of issues without being like off-putting or too aggressive, or like, you know, too lengthy, because, you know, they're not going to spend 3 hours or 4 hours watching a podcast or a panel at that point or something, right? This is where I think channels like Genetically Modified Skeptic, I'm failing to think of the name, but there's the other guy who has like the game that he does. Welcome, my fellow apes, or whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. With the long hair and the ponytail, right? Like this is where I really think a lot of those channels fill in. Yeah, they're really good for that situation in a way that a lot of other content creators really aren't, right? And then I think something really interesting happens, which is you go through a different phase where you've kind of gone through a lot of these videos, and it almost, there's not enough rationality rules. That's who I was talking about. Yeah, thanks for the memory jog there. But yeah, I think there comes a point where you move on from that and you get into like your Pine Creeks or your Nates and the people like more like even like your Derek. I think Derek's a gateway into this, where you're realizing, oh, people are kind of making this more interactive content. There's actually a really sort of vibrant, you know, sub-community of content creators. And then you are on the path towards, you know, realizing that a lot of the chatters are consistent people and maybe like participating in the community, and, you know, getting to the channels that we're all into where we're like stream hopping. I think the channels that we're into, what I'm getting at is I think they come later in the progression, right? I think they come into your queue and you start to really focus on channels like that when you need the community. Like, but when you first start, you're not at like, oh, I need to surround myself with an atheist community and start interacting with other atheists on the regular. Like, you're not even ready to identify yourself as an atheist, right? You're still in the closet and you're like, you know, maybe like after work and after my kids go to bed, like before I'm dozing off, I'll like play some of my regular TV in the background so nobody hears, and like I'll listen to this in like my headphones so I can like, you know, exercise some of these ideas I've been thinking about, right? I think when you're like there, like you're not watching Pine Creek, or you're not ready to like jump in the atheist chat or like jump in a Discord and have a debate. Like, you're not doing any of that. But yeah, I love this guy's content. I think he did that for me, and I still recommend this type of content a lot for people who are at that phase.
Today, though,
and then of course he still makes just content that's great and enjoyable and makes me really think even now.
Non-sectarian scholarship on the topic is available, though not always conveniently accessible. In an effort to make this scholarship more accessible to us lay people, I've put together the Crucifixion and Resurrection of Jesus iceberg. I've done this with the aid of 2 New Testament scholars, Dr.
Those icebergs are really good,
Bart
for instance. It's a great example.
Dr. Ehrman is actually participating in a must-see online event on April 9th, 2022.
This looks cool.
He will be debating on the topic, did the resurrection of Jesus really
Some of
happen?
These off-brand GTA type games.
Christian New Testament scholar Dr. Mike Licona. Now, I'm usually
might be having
hesitant to
a
recommend
problem.
debates on such topics because of how fruitless and
was telling me some
frustrating they
shit
can
about
be,
memory the
but
other
I'm happy
day.
to recommend this one for the following reasons. Bart Ehrman and Mike Licona are friends who have debated many times before. They're sharing their notes with each other beforehand, so all points and counterpoints will be well calculated rather than
I gotta move where
spontaneous.
my BlueStacks installation is.
This will be an all-day event with Q&A. So this will
this was
almost
before the
definitely be
infamous
most thorough, scholarly
Ehrman
debate
Licona
on the
debate
resurrection you have ever seen. If you can't attend the live sessions, no problem. Signing up through my affiliate link in the description, as well as the pinned comment, will give you access to recordings.
All right, let's see what we've got. I want to. I just added this Play Pass thing too. I'm excited about that. I just paid for this because I want to game and have fun and get into random stuff. So
of course, every purchase through my link will
some of this stuff is cool. Like, I'd love to play a lot of these rando games.
Okay, let's get onto the iceberg. We will, of course, begin with better-known facts about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, and work our way down.
Didn't we download Diablo, right?
Layer 1, the historical Jesus. Jesus, the Jewish apocalypticist.
No, I don't want to go to YouTube.
So it's not a term that most people throw around, but biblical scholars do all the time, apocalypticism. It's a scholarly term. It's a modern term that scholars have invented to explain a worldview that was very widespread in the days of Jesus, that had been around for a couple hundred years before Jesus.
Glad we saw that. All right. How do I move to like the next page?
The term apocalypticism comes from the Greek word apocalypse.
Click and drag type of thing.
Apocalypse really, it literally
but I don't see
means
it over
something
there.
like a revealing,
not over
or
there.
An unveiling, or a disclosure. These people were called apocalypticists because they believed that God had revealed to them or disclosed to them the heavenly secrets.
All right, that's weird. Wasn't there more to this interface?
Realities. What they learned, and the secrets were that this world that we live in now is controlled by forces of evil, cosmic forces of evil, that are making life miserable for most people, except for those who side up with them and then who become, as a result, rich and famous and powerful. These forces of evil then are working through humans to exploit and harm others.
I feel like there was
God, for some reason, has relinquished control. But God's soon going to intervene to overthrow these forces of evil and bring.
I don't know. I thought I had installed more games.
These wretched kingdoms we live with now.
All right, maybe I should just look it up and see what it says.
The forces of evil will be destroyed. So will everybody else who has sided with them, sided with God, will be rewarded with this coming kingdom. Those who have sided with the forces of evil, the devil,
sorry,
demons,
that computer was on the wrong one. Oh yeah, I guess I didn't install it. That's weird.
Shown the error of their ways, and then to be ruthlessly destroyed. And the idea is this is going to happen soon, very soon. And so this is the apocalyptic view. It's a view that Jesus had, John the Baptist had, the people who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls had, Pharisees had. It was a very, very common point of view. And so it's a view that scholars for over 100 years now have said Jesus himself had.
A threat to the empire. Crucifixion, as the Romans employed it, was not an ordinary.
Hey, YouTube punk. Sorry, I just caught that, but I'm glad because of the MyOneBlack comment. But I'm glad you agree about the phases.
Compelled to drink poison. Crucifixion.
I actually think that'd be a good subject for a video, like a short video, right? If I was going to make a video about something, maybe like a 5 to 10 minute video, that'd be an interesting one to make for like promoting the channel, to talk about the phases of of getting to the counter-apologist community.
By contrast, was a slow, public, and relatively involved way to kill someone. It was consequently reserved for a particular class of offenses against the Roman order. Crucifixion served as an advertisement for Roman power. This is what happens, the cross said, to anyone who challenges the authority of Rome. The slaves who followed Spartacus in revolt against the empire, for instance, were crucified en masse. Similarly, General Varus crucified thousands of Galilean Jews who participated in a revolt against Roman occupiers. Jesus' death by crucifixion, then, suggests something about the Roman perception of him. Jesus wasn't crucified for preaching love and kindness, disturbing the peace, or claiming to be a god. Jesus was crucified because Roman administrators believed he represented a challenge to imperial power. I asked Dr. Bart Ehrman about this, and he argued for this view by citing the Gospels themselves.
Jesus in the apocalyptic.
So I guess is it going to wait till after?
Kingdom.
All right, I want to check this.
The kingdom would be here on earth. It's a real kingdom. It's not. Jesus is not talking about your soul going to heaven when you died. He's talking about a kingdom here on earth. He was crucified by the Romans for a clearly stated reason in the Gospels themselves. He was crucified, according to the Gospels, for claiming that he.
All right, let's go back home and see what we got. See what we can actually do. Oh, you know what I wanted to show you guys?
Might mean this in some kind of apocalyptic sense. You know, that God is going to destroy.
I found my game controller.
But the Romans were not apocalypticists. They heard
I should have set it up.
That he was the ruler of the Jews when they were the
Let's think of what I can do without setting it up. Let's see if
king of the Jews, who wasn't a Roman already, was to overthrow the Roman Empire.
Try BlueStacks 10. Aren't we already doing that?
He was crucified as an insurrectionist, as the Gospels themselves say, and it makes sense apocalyptically because he's preaching about this coming kingdom, and so they concluded he thought he was going to be the king of this coming kingdom.
Nah,
Scholarly conflict on Jesus' burial. According to the Gospels, Jesus' body was buried in the tomb
You got
of
any
Joseph of
ideas?
Arimathea.
Let's go
Some
magic.
scholars have expressed incredulity toward this detail of the Gospel narrative, noting allusions in Greek and Latin literature to the denial of burial to those crucified. The elder Seneca, for instance, muses that nature provides a kind of burial for everyone,
what's his face?
including those
No
crucified,
Name's a big
since their body
Magic the
decomposes
Gathering
into
guy. That's why I actually started playing
If
this,
the
because No
point of
Name
Roman
talks about
crucifixion
magic.
is to advertise the consequences of threatening imperial order, it makes sense to leave up the display as long as possible.
Oh no, I was just saying that I was glad you agreed with me about the phases, and I think that'd be a cool thing to make a video about. And yeah, I'm sure your wife does have those powers. They funny like that.
Possible.
Yeah, I'm one of those scholars, and I'll just say that I'm in the minority on this. Most scholars don't think this. I decided actually to look up every reference I could find in every Greek and Roman source.
Does anything want to let me have fun and play a game, or is everything
I
like
read every
install,
reference I could find
download,
and
update?
None of them describe how crucifixion happens. They don't describe like what they do when like how they actually do the act of crucifixion. And most of them don't say anything about what happens afterwards. But those who do say something are virtually uniform. When somebody got crucified, they were not allowed to be buried. Part of the punishment by the Romans was that people were left on their crosses after they died so that they would decompose.
And this is the shit that drives me fucking crazy about Christians, is that, I hate to say this, but like the reason most of us stopped being believers was we were taking the faith too seriously. We looked into all this shit. These are the answers that we found. And so what I think I always call it a fundamental asymmetry. I think it's really important. You hear a lot of issues where people are talking about, well, you want to be reasonable, you want to respect both sides. There's really smart people who have both opinions. Oh, this is the game that kept telling us we don't have enough storage. All right. I got to figure this out. And I think this is because the Blue Apps thing, when I looked into this BlueStacks thing, only has access to like certain, it like puts itself on like a fake tablet or something to where it limits how much memory or something you have. I got to figure that out. So I guess we're just not going to get into that game tonight, because I guess that's going to be one that is going to give me a hard time. Where did I put now I got to figure out where that stack thinger went. I don't want to do Sonic because there's no way on earth I'm playing Sonic without a controller. I can't do Hogwarts. Oh, I thought we were going to do Magic. All right, so I bet you I've got a bunch of these open now. Yeah, and I don't know. I can't see what they are. There was that thing before where it was showing me... Yeah, here we go. All right. So close Sonic. Sorry, this is a new interface. I'm still getting to learn. Yeah, basically close all this except this one. And I guess we'll wait for this. All right, cool. And yeah, I'm going to let Bart Ehrman play. All right, but look, let me tell y'all real quick. Oh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, I'm totally down. Totally down. I just got to switch over. Let me see how easily I can switch over to my PlayStation. That easily. I told y'all, folks, I'll be working on the tech. All I got to do is, just pull it over and just switch over to it. I should switch my monitoring setup, but I'll play Bart Ehrman. All right, so what's the fundamental asymmetry? The fundamental asymmetry is that most of us, or a lot of us, a great disproportionate amount of us have been believers before. And so we know what it's like to be a believer, and we know what it's like to take the believer's lens on all of these things. The believers don't know what it's like to take our perspective on these things. YouTube Punk, appreciate you so much for all your activity tonight. I'm probably going to head to bed soon myself too. I'm kind of just bouncing around between games, killing a little bit of time before I head to bed myself. It was good for me to switch over to my PS4 and see how this goes. But yeah, man, I'll catch you later, man. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for all your chatting tonight. Really appreciate you.
on the cross. They would rot away, and the scavengers, especially the birds, would go after them.
The evidence surrounding this topic is complicated, though. There are references in both Philo and Josephus, two contemporary Jewish authors, to the burial of crucified criminals. Philo says that
I gotta switch my monitoring setup, or else I won't get the audio. Let me see.
Occasions. This remark, of course, suggests that burial of crucified criminals was possible, but not quite normal. Josephus, in contrast, compares his neighboring Idumeans unfavorably to Judeans for leaving their dead unburied, arguing that Jews even bury the victims of crucifixion. Finally, there is archaeological evidence that crucified persons in first century Judea were sometimes allowed a normal burial. The first century tomb of a crucified man named Yehohanan. So, was Jesus buried? It's possible, but its probability depends on the scholar you ask. The historical method can't confirm the resurrection. So I intended to have Bart Ehrman explain this uniquely for this video, but when I interviewed him for this video, I forgot to ask him about it. So instead, I'm going to show you a clip from one of Dr. Ehrman and Dr. Lycona's previous debates, where Dr. Ehrman explains why scholars cannot and do not use the historical method to support the resurrection narrative.
That's the problem with history. It's not like the natural sciences. The natural sciences work by repeated demonstration. And so, for example, if I wanted to show you that bars of iron will sink in that swimming pool and bars of ivory soap will float, all I need to do is to get 100 bars of both and start chucking them in. I'll chuck in 100 bars of iron, they'll sink every time. I'll chuck in the soap, they'll float every time. That gives us a predictive probability of what will happen the 101st time. That's how sciences work, by repeated experimentation. Historians don't have that luxury. Historians can only establish on the basis of surviving evidence what probably happened in the past, and by definition, miracles are the least probable occurrence, or else they're not a miracle. This creates the dilemma for the historian and is the reason why historians cannot prove Jesus was raised from the dead. Historians, by their very nature, establish what most probably happened in the past, but a miracle, by its definition, is the least probable occurrence in the past. The least probable occurrence cannot be most probable. This is the problem with
I love this explanation.
Even
this is
if it
Bart
happens,
Ehrman at
it
its
defies
finest.
Imagination and cannot be accepted as a historically proven event. Belief in the resurrection. If you believe in the resurrection, it is for theological reasons. The resurrection is a theological assertion about what God did to Jesus. It is not, and it cannot be, based on historical proof.
Now, if you want to hear even more fleshed out arguments for and against the historicity of Jesus' resurrection,
Love it, love it, love it. We're set up, we're going, we're good.
Layer 2, differences and
Love
contradictions
it.
in the Gospels. All right, I'm going to have Dr. Ehrman open this topic up, and then we will discuss some differences and contradictions in the Gospel accounts surrounding Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection.
You know, it doesn't make the resurrection narratives in the New Testament different from
Yeah, I
other
think tomorrow
narratives
what
that
I'll do is I'll set up my controller,
various
I'll
accounts.
set
It
up
makes
some
them
games and
like
stuff
so
off
many of the other
stream.
accounts, which is when we have the same account
Which is what I
in
should have
more
done
than one
today, but I
source.
was
Often
busy
they are
putting together an
not
audio
each other.
video rack. And then I
so
just
you
wanted to
compare
stream
what
and have
Gospels
fun.
Say, take the same story in two Gospels. You compare them and say, whoa.
I still got to learn how to
differences
play,
here.
actually.
And it
I'm still
happens with
learning this
resurrection
game, but it's so
Some
much
things are just
fun.
different, but you know, they kind of look contradictory. How many women go to the tomb?
Trying to master Donatello first is my favorite
When they got
Teenage
to the
Mutant
tomb,
Ninja Turtle.
What did they see there? Did they see a man? Did they see
Not
demons?
ambiguous with me.
Did they see an angel? What did
Die
they see
hard
there?
Donatello
what did the
guy.
person tell them about Jesus? They always say he's raised from the dead, but what did they tell
I
them
want to smoke
do?
real quick,
And did the women
so
do it or not?
I'm going to switch y'all up. We're going to
so
switch
you
up
just go
cams real
through
quick.
these things
Let me
and you
see.
realize, actually, these are at odds with each other. You know, they might seem like little points, but we're talking about the resurrection here.
Some of
What
this is
really
I'm trying to
happened,
show
even if you
off
think
and
it
work
did
through
happen. You combine that with the fact that these sources
my
are written,
streaming
the earliest
routines.
source is 40 years later by somebody who wasn't there, who didn't even speak the same language.
So for instance, right now I want to get rid of that mini
They just heard
camera.
stories that were floating around, and they all had heard stories. Well, so why do you have the contradictions? And
Mute the
are some of the
game because we're not
contradictions
listening to it
completely
right
irreconcilable?
now.
I think so. And so what does that do to the value of these books as historical sources? That's going to be one of the things that I think we'll be talking about a good deal in this debate. How reliable are these as historical sources?
Jesus' last words. What were Jesus' last
With Dr.
words?
Ehrman
my
on
God,
a
my
full
God, why have you
screen.
forsaken me? Or into your hands I commit my spirit?
Or
it is finished.
Drew, rather.
It depends on which gospel you read. Matthew and Mark report only the first, which alludes to Psalm 22. But Luke makes no mention of this. Jesus' final words in Luke come from a different psalm. Into your hands I commit my spirit, being the first line of Psalm 31. Finally, John doesn't have Jesus quote either psalm. Jesus in John does not despair, as in Matthew and Mark, or resign himself to God's will, as in Luke. Rather, Jesus declares from the cross that his work is complete. He says, "It is finished." Jesus' last words in each gospel make sense as a part of each author's own portrayal of Jesus. But what Jesus really said with his expiring breath is anyone's guess. When was the stone rolled away?
This is really great.
In the gospel accounts, Jesus'
so
tomb was
good.
closed with a large stone. In Mark, the women worry about who will move the stone for them as they make their way to visit Jesus' resting place. But as they approached the tomb, the earliest gospel states, they saw the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. It's not clear when or how it happened, but the stone was removed before the women arrived. Matthew gives a slightly more dramatic account. The women go to see the tomb, and suddenly there's an earthquake, a flash of light, and an angel who descends to roll back the stone. We know the women were watching because the angel turns to address them, saying, "Do not be afraid." So when was the stone rolled back? It depends on the gospel you read. For a much more dramatic account of the stone's removal, you'll have to wait until further down in the iceberg. How did Judas die? Judas, the follower of Jesus who betrayed his master, died a tragic death. But what happened? Matthew says he returned his 30 pieces of silver to the Jewish leaders and then hanged himself. The leaders, Matthew tells us, used Judas' money to buy a field to bury foreigners. The book of Acts, on the other hand, says Judas used the money to buy a field where he, quote, fell headfirst and his body burst open and his intestines spilled out. The authors thus describe two very different kinds of death. Hanging, after all, usually involves falling head last. Moreover, these Gospels give different accounts of Judas' money. Did he spend it or not? Where did Jesus meet the disciples? The Gospel of Mark, probably the first Gospel written, does not describe Jesus reuniting with his disciples. The women discover an empty tomb, and the angels remind them that Jesus promised to meet his disciples in Galilee. The Gospel of Matthew supplies this scene. Jesus appears to his disciples on top of a mountain and delivers the Great Commission. The Gospel of Luke tells a different story. Here again, women discover the empty tomb and meet Jesus, but when they tell the disciples, no one believes them. On the same day, says the author of Luke, Jesus met two men on the road to Emmaus, just outside of Jerusalem. They returned to Jerusalem that very evening to tell the disciples about Jesus, and while they're talking, Jesus appears to the disciples. Among other things, Jesus instructs his disciples not to leave Jerusalem until they receive the power of the Holy Spirit, a promise fulfilled at Pentecost later in the book of Acts. So, Matthew depicts Jesus' disciples returning to Galilee to meet with Jesus, while Luke describes Jesus instructing them on the very day of his resurrection to remain in Jerusalem until Pentecost. Neither mentions any of the events described in the other. The day of Jesus' death. In the Synoptic Gospels, that is Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus celebrates a Passover meal with his disciples before he's arrested. The Gospel of Luke makes it explicit that they ate this meal, as was customary, at the end of the day of preparation. Jesus then prays with his disciples in the garden and is arrested. After, Jesus is tried before the Sanhedrin and then before Pilate. Finally, he's crucified at noon. The Gospel of John, however, describes Jesus dying on the day of preparation before the Passover meal. In fact, the fourth Gospel reminds the reader 3 times that all of these events, Jesus' trial, Jesus' death, and Jesus' burial, happens on the day of preparation for the Passover. Jesus dies in the Gospel of John the day before the Passover meal. So why the difference? Some scholars believe the Gospels simply received different traditions about Jesus' death. Other scholars who believe the author of John used the Synoptics as a source suggest that the fourth Gospel changed the sequence in order to make Jesus die at the same time as the Passover lamb. Jesus is, for John's author, the Lamb of God. A threat to the temple. The notion that Jesus promised
I don't
to
really
destroy
appreciate
and rebuild the
getting
temple
whacked with
appears
these
twice
plumbers.
In the trial before Jewish leaders,
Oh, I gotta
Mark
get used
says
to like
Jesus
trying to
was
whack
falsely
projectiles,
accused,
right? Because you
claiming
can
that
shoot
he
that
would
at me,
destroy
shoot
the
at me.
Jewish
Yeah,
temple
see,
and rebuild it
ooh,
in
yeah,
3
shoot at me,
days.
shoot at,
Even
ooh,
on this
yeah,
point, Mark
ooh,
adds,
yeah,
the testimony did not
shoot at me.
Mark then reminds us of this charge a few scenes later. People
That
passing
was
by Jesus'
fun.
crucifixion mock him, shouting, "You who would destroy the temple and
What?
rebuild
What?
it in
Oh, they
3
about to
days,
pop up out
save
the ground?
yourself and come down from the cross." While these passages suggest the animus between Jesus
I didn't
and
catch
Jewish
that one.
leadership had something to do with a threat to the temple and a promise of restoration,
Oh, see, when you
Mark
jump
seems to
into it,
indicate
that's a
that
problem.
Jesus never said any such thing. The Gospel of John gives a different perspective.
Oh, damn it.
In the fourth Gospel, Jesus stands in the temple courts declaring, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days."
Uh-oh.
The people, of course, are outraged. The author of John interjects at this point that Jesus had been misunderstood. He was speaking about the temple of the body.
What is
the
with this
disciples
dude?
would understand Jesus' words, the author tells us,
Can I get
only
a
after
pizza?
Jesus rose from the dead. Layer 3, things they didn't
His
teach
guns,
in Sunday school.
his sword's so heavy.
The doubt traditions.
In every story where Jesus appears to the disciples, it says that they doubted. They doubted that he'd been raised from the dead. That's strange. Why would they doubt it?
Yeah,
If
didn't he
it's right
say
there
he
in
was
front of
God and do a bunch of
the
miracles?
strangest verse in this entire
Didn't he
sequence of
raise
narrative
Lazarus
is
from the
actually
dead
in
and shit?
Acts chapter 1,
Here we
verse
go.
3, which says that so Jesus has been raised from the dead at the beginning of Acts. He's just been resurrected, and he's talking with the disciples. And we're told in Acts chapter 1, verse 3 that
See, y'all
Jesus
doing too
spent
much. Y'all doing too much. Y'all doing too much. Y'all doing too much.
proving
Y'all
to
doing
his
too much.
disciples with many proofs that he had been raised from
Go
the dead.
ninja, go ninja, go,
People
go
skip over
ninja,
that verse
go
and don't think
ninja,
about it.
go.
Think about it for a second. Why would Jesus have to spend 40 days giving many proofs that he was raised from the dead? He's there. He's talking to them. They can touch him. They can see him eat. What kind of proofs would he be giving them?
Oh
They need
yeah,
40 days of it. I mean,
give it to
surely
me,
if somebody
give it
shows
to
up in your
me. Give me
living
that
room and you talk to him
power.
and you feel him and you hear him and you see him eat, you think, you don't need 40 days to be convinced he's doing that.
Oh, son. Oh,
So
nah,
anyway,
son,
so
nah, son,
what's
nah,
this
son,
doubt tradition
nah,
all about?
son.
I
Nah,
think this is an understudied question. I think that the reason you have these doubt traditions in the New Testament is because some of the disciples really did doubt whether Jesus was raised from the dead. And the fact that they doubted it got written into the narratives.
Zombie invasion.
Oh, that's right,
Jesus'
because
death
Bart
is accompanied
Ehrman's
by
a
signs and
historicist,
wonders.
so he
All
thinks
three
Jesus
synoptic
had real
gospels describe a
followers, and his
supernatural
real
darkness and
followers
the splitting
doubted
of the
it.
temple curtain during Jesus'
I
crucifixion.
see you, Bart Ehrman.
Matthew, however, adds a sequence of events unique
Again,
to this
kind of
gospel.
weird.
The earth shook, says Matthew. The rocks split and the tombs broke open. And then enter the zombies.
Nah, I don't really appreciate
Bodies
you making
of
it
many
rain
holy ones
size
who
on
died
me,
were raised
bruh.
to
Like,
life.
nah,
They came out of the
ooh,
tombs
nah.
after
Who are
Jesus'
you?
resurrection
Who are you?
and
I don't
went
like
into
you.
the holy city and appeared to many people.
I don't like you.
But what
Nah,
is
that means
the
I'm not
author of
gonna-
Matthew actually picturing here?
How do you
The
defend
tombs break
yourself
open on
against
Good
this
Friday
nonsense?
as Jesus is dying, but the holy ones don't enter Jerusalem until after Jesus' resurrection. This leaves me wondering, how did they spend their weekend, those 2 intervening days? Did they just wait in their tombs? And where did they go after Jesus' ascension?
Oh,
Did
and you
they
could get too
return
close. You
to
got to
their
get too
tombs?
close or too far.
The gospel doesn't say.
But if you're in that sweet spot, he's gonna hit you.
Jesus didn't fit the Jewish idea of Messiah.
This is one of the hardest things for many Christians today to get their minds around.
Bro, I
Why
need a
don't
pizza. I
Jews
need a
realize
pizza,
that
pizza,
Jesus is the
pizza.
Messiah? He's predicted all over the place in the Old Testament. You've got predictions of him being born in Bethlehem, to a virgin, to him doing miracles, to him being rejected, to him suffering, to him dying, being executed, being raised from the dead. You find proof throughout the entire Old Testament. Why don't Jews see that? Are they blind? Are they?
They can't read.
Are they hard-hearted?
They can't read.
Are they stupid?
They just can't read.
What? I don't get it.
Yeah, like-
my Christian students really, they just generally don't get it.
They generally can't
So I
read.
have to explain to them that in fact there were no Jews in the days of Jesus prior to his disciples saying that he was the Messiah. After they believed in the resurrection, there were no Jews who thought that these passages that are quoted by Christians were referring to the Messiah. And so Christians are familiar, for example, with Isaiah chapter 53. And it's impossible for a Christian or most anyone else to read Isaiah 53 without thinking this is talking about Jesus. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him. And by his wounds, we are healed. Well, it's Jesus suffering for us, for our sins. It's right there, right? Why don't you see that? So I tell my students, I said, yes, this seems to be about somebody who's suffering for the sake of others. I said, now read the passage and find the word Messiah. They read, well, the Messiah is not mentioned here. No, the Messiah is not mentioned there. Who is mentioned there? It's somebody called the servant of the Lord. That's the Messiah, right? So, well, who does Isaiah think the servant of the Lord is? Let's read Isaiah. And I point out to Isaiah chapter 49, verse 3.
What?
where Isaiah explicitly says that the servant of the Lord is Israel. It can't be Israel. It's somebody who suffers for others. Well, when was this written? So I try to explain to them, look, there were just no Jews who thought this was a messianic prophecy. Neither was Isaiah 7 about the virgin birth.
Get the pop
neither
one.
was being born in Bethlehem. These are not seen as messianic prophecies. And so in Jewish thinking at the time of Jesus, the Messiah, there were various views among Jews what the Messiah
kind of feel like
would
I
be.
got suckered there. Like maybe I should have broke them all.
The standard explanation was that he would be one like King David. The word Messiah means anointed one who's anointed as one who having God's favor, and it was used of ancient kings. And so the Messiah will be an anointed king, a Messiah like David was, who was an anointed king. There'll be a future king as a military leader, a political leader. He will drive out the enemy. He'll establish Israel as a sovereign state. He'll rule out of Jerusalem. That's what the Messiah will be, a great figure of power. Others thought that he wouldn't be a human ruler. He'd be a divine ruler, one like a son of man that Daniel talked about in Daniel chapter 7, a kind of a cosmic judge of the earth. Others thought that he would be a great priest who would rule the people of God by his interpretations of the law. There were different expectations. All of them thought that, in fact, the Messiah was going to be somebody great and powerful. Jesus was not.
I don't want to fuck with this leatherhead.
He did not throw out the Romans. He did not establish a kingdom in Israel.
Nah, this is about to get real grimy.
He didn't destroy the enemy.
It's about to
he
get
got destroyed by the enemy. He was arrested
grimy.
and he was tortured.
Something about to happen with these
publicly
craters.
Humiliated.
See,
this is the opposite of a Messiah.
See
Jews,
what?
Most Jews,
What is he doing? Nah.
He's the opposite of a
Messiah. No.
That's why this was not the expectation. Christians who thought Jesus was the Messiah had a pretty simple reasoning. Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus suffered and died and was raised from the dead. Therefore, the Messiah has to suffer and die and rise from the dead.
I went for it too soon.
All right,
at least give me that pizza. Give me that sweet pizza.
Crucifixion as a curse.
Whoa.
Second Temple Jews believed that victims of crucifixion were subject to a special curse. Deuteronomy 21:23 states that he is cursed who is hung from a tree. In its Deuteronomic context, this probably did not refer to crucifixion, but to the exposure of the body of an executed criminal. Nevertheless, contemporary Jewish interpreters like Philo and the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls associated Deuteronomy's hung from a tree with crucifixion. The same interpretation
does he always come out of the
Paul's
same one?
letter to
Nope, never.
Galatians, where Paul argues that Christ saved humanity from the curse of the law through becoming accursed by hanging from a tree. Did all 12 of Jesus' disciples believe in and preach the resurrection?
That's a really interesting question, and I'd say it's impossible to say because the historical evidence doesn't give us much. In the Gospels, they come to believe.
You're gonna die. You're gonna die now.
So that's the New Testament testimony. It is also very interesting that in the book of Acts, which is called the Acts of the Apostles, it's supposed to be about how the apostles spread Christianity after Jesus' death.
Motherfucking
Most of these disciples
bunga.
never show up outside of being named as a group in the first chapter or two.
Woohoo!
In other words, you have all the you got 11. The one's been made a new one's been added to make 12. But when you read Acts in chapters 1 through 12, you get Peter, who's the main character, and John, who shows up sometimes. The others don't do anything.
Bodacious.
They don't do
I
anything.
unlocked the special character.
So why aren't there stories of these others?
Y'all, we get to go
there
to
weren't
10.
Any stories to tell.
I'm having so much fun.
All right,
let me spark it up a little bit.
Strike me as very odd.
Who were the robbers? The Synoptic Gospels describe Jesus crucified with two others, described as Leistai in Mark and Matthew. The Gospel of Luke gives a dialogue in which one mocks Jesus and another confesses Jesus' innocence. Christian tradition has identified these victims of Roman crucifixion as the impenitent and penitent thief, respectively. But were they really thieves? Notably, the Gospels don't use the ordinary word for thief, kleptes. Further, it would be strange to hear of an ordinary thief punished by crucifixion. As already discussed, crucifixion was usually reserved for egregious threats to the Roman order. Is there a better way to understand the scene that these angels are painting? The word leistes is derived from the word for plunder, and so has traditionally been translated as robber.
Again, this is going to sound crazy, but for me, this is why the crucifixion is not a good argument for Christianity. Because only in a fairy tale can a man who can be described as sinless, who's literally never said a stray word to anybody, can become an egregious threat to the Roman order such that he needs to be crucified. Go fuck yourself.
Referring to someone who steals by threat of violence rather than stealth. A glance at other first-century uses of the word offers another explanation, though. Josephus describes the Sicarii and the Zealots as Laestai. These were Jewish groups who violently opposed the Roman occupation of Palestine, most famously publicly assassinating Romans and cooperating Judeans. This is the kind of criminal who we would expect to see crucified. Plausibly then, the synoptics use Laestai for Jesus' companions on the cross, not to refer to robbers, but something closer to rebels, or even terrorists. But did you know that these robbers had names? We'll get to that further down the iceberg. The later the gospel, the more blame it places on the Jewish people.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting exercise that if you just line the gospels up chronologically. So Mark is almost certainly the first gospel, written about 40 years after Jesus' death, usually dated around 70 or so. Matthew, some years later, a decade later or so. Luke a little bit after that, in the mid-80s maybe. The Gospel of John, the last gospel in the 90s. And then after that, you get other gospels that also could be figured into this calculus I'm going to give now. In the Gospel of Mark, what happens is Jesus goes into when Jesus arrives in Jerusalem.
What? Oh, you ain't gonna just ride or die on me.
And he's disturbed by what he sees there.
Come out here. Yeah. What?
Changing money, and he drives off people selling animals because he thinks that they've made the temple of God into a business practice, and so he's upset. This gets the leaders
really?
Of
what is this shit?
Because they're in favor of the temple. That's the reason they exist, is to promote the worship of the temple.
Holy
and eventually, over the course of the week, they get more and more upset with him, and they end up turning him over to
it ain't your time. Oh, come on. I really don't appreciate that. Y'all can't just be smacking me like that.
Pilate, his trial in Mark, says to the Jewish, the Sadducees, the scribes, and the Pharisees, describes them the chief priests. He says,
I don't like this thing.
And they don't answer.
I don't like that thing. What is this? Why is there more of these things? Oh no! Oh hell!
And so he didn't know what he had done wrong, but he caved into what they said. So that's the first account. And so there, it's kind of a shared responsibility.
Nah, bruh. I knew he was gonna do that. I knew it was gonna start spawning. Oh, these are the worst. They spawn these little things, and then the little things are annoying. You gotta kill the big thing though. Because the big thing will spawn more of the little things.
And he would like to release him. But no, the crowd, the crowd, the Jewish leaders and the crowd.
How many hits does this thing take?
So in Matthew, Pilate calls in for water, a basin of water to be brought in, and he washes his hands.
And it like spawns as a dying act.
This man's blood. So he doesn't want to do it. He's innocent. You want it? Okay, you take the responsibility.
I'm hoping to find an extra pizza. Oh, I got a tape.
The entire crowd of Jews cries out, "His blood be upon us and our children." In other words, they take responsibility and they pass it on to their descendants.
This is bad. Hold on, there's a pizza though. Gotta get that pizza. Gotta get to that pizza.
That's a verse that got used
for
some
horrible
anti-Semitic purposes over the years.
Give me that pizza.
Luke is a little bit later, and Luke doesn't have Pilate washing his hands, but in Luke's gospel, Pilate actively declares Jesus innocent 3 times. Actually,
I find no fault with this man.
He's done nothing wrong.
Oh, I'll let you kill him though. Oh, you guys really want to kill him though? That's okay.
He sends him off to King Herod.
That's definitely realistic. I definitely see him doing that. That's
They're all
totally
saying
realistic.
he's innocent. It's the Jewish people who insist.
And they insist, and then Pilate, a Roman authority, is like, yeah, I'll go ahead, go for it. Just go for it. Yeah.
John, the
I mean, if you guys are really into it, if you guys really think he needs to die, you know.
Jesus innocent 3 times.
Who am I to stand in your way?
But the chief priests insist that Pilate crucify him, and then in the Greek, you don't get this in many English translations. What it says is the chief priest accused him.
Right, the chief priest
and so Pilate
has so much influence on the Roman procurator or whatever the fuck Pilate was.
It's talking about the chief priest. If you read John carefully in the Greek, he's saying the chief priest crucified him. You say, yeah, but they didn't crucify. I know they didn't crucify, but I'm just saying that John is really stressing Jewish guilt. So what happens then is Pilate gets more and more innocent over time. He doesn't want to do it over time. And the reason is because if Pilate is innocent...
No, they're the same story, though.
And so this is part of the
That's what Mike Winger said.
To Jews and Judaism that's on the rise during this period. And it goes on from there, and it gets worse and worse, obviously.
Layer 4. Textual variants, non-Christian accounts, and other mysteries. The endings of Mark. In the last chapter of the Gospel according to Mark, 3 women discover the empty tomb and receive angelic instructions for the disciples. The oldest and most reliable manuscripts end with the line, "So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid." Most manuscripts, however, contain the so-called longer ending of Mark. This ending consists of 12 verses which give an abbreviated account of 3 of Jesus' post-resurrection appearances. The first is his appearance to Mary, the second to 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus, and the third is to his disciples to deliver the Great Commission, including instructions to handle serpents and drink poison, as notoriously practiced in some Appalachian Pentecostal churches. This longer ending was printed in most Bibles, including the King James Version, until the advent of modern textual criticism. There is also a shorter ending that describes the women reporting their findings to the disciples and the disciples receiving instruction from Jesus. This is just 2 short sentences of an ending. The report that the women ran immediately to the disciples sits awkwardly next to the ending of the original gospel, in which the author reports that because of their fear, the women told no one what they had seen. Only one manuscript, the Old Latin Codex Boviensis, smooths out the inconsistency by erasing the embarrassing line from the original ending. There is one even stranger ending to Mark, but we'll get to that in a bit. Is the ascension in the Gospels? Does Jesus' ascension, his return to heaven, ever appear in the Gospels? Matthew, Mark, and John do not mention the event. Matthew ends abruptly with Jesus' Great Commission, and Mark even more abruptly before Jesus' resurrection appearances. John has an authorial conclusion following a series of Jesus' appearances, but no allusion to the ascension. Most manuscripts of Luke, however, include the sentence, "While he was blessing them, he left them and was taken up into heaven." This is in chapter 24 of Luke. Some of our earliest and best manuscripts, however, omit the final clause. The variation in the manuscripts probably has something to do with the fact that Luke's sequel, the book of Acts, begins with its own description of Jesus' ascension. One of 2 things must have happened. Possibility 1, the author of Luke Acts ended his gospel with the ascension, and some later scribe, thinking it was redundant coming right before Acts, deleted it. Possibility 2, the author did not include an ascension in the gospel, and a scribe, having read Acts, added it as a fitting conclusion to the life of Jesus. The United Bible Society's editorial committee, an international group of scholars
Come on,
tasked
Shredder, you
with
activating
producing
some
the most
kind of
widely
turtle
used critical
robot,
edition of the New
metalhead.
Testament,
I
could
see what
not
you did
agree
there.
on which explanation
I
was
feel
most
flattered
likely.
though, like he thought
Most
enough of
modern
us to
Bibles
like make a
consequently
robot
leave the
version
verse in Luke
just to
with
kill
a
us with
note
it,
its
you know?
dubious status.
Kind of a
Was Jesus stabbed to
romantic
death?
kind of notion if you think
All
about
4
it.
canonical Gospels describe Jesus' life ending in crucifixion, but a textual variant in the Gospel of
feeling
Matthew
is not
describes
mutual.
Jesus stabbed with a
Whoa,
Roman spear
oh,
while
come
he was
on.
the
No,
cross
not an
about to
army
die.
of these things
In these
and bombs.
manuscripts, Roman
Okay,
guards
this
pierce
is
Jesus'
what
side
is
just
going
before he
on.
cries
And then
out
he's
and
shielded
expires.
while all this is
The
going
really
on.
strange thing
You know,
about
this
variant
is
that
highly
it's supported by
ridiculous.
all the best and most reliable manuscripts of Matthew.
Highly
this
ridiculous.
variant reading enjoys roughly the same manuscript
Man,
support
I
as the
gotta
shortest
deal
ending
with
of
all
Mark,
these little
which is
guys.
now printed in all scholarly editions. So,
And then him and
what's
his
the
little
difference?
super
Was
extension
Jesus originally
arms.
stabbed to death in the Gospel of Matthew, and some Christian scribe removed this inconsistency
on.
with the other Gospels?
No,
well,
all right, I gotta
honestly,
survive
it's
this.
possible, but scholars have generally held to a different explanation. There's a close, though not verbatim, parallel in John, where Jesus' side is pierced after his death by a Roman spear. Scholars have plausibly suggested that this was copied by memory to explain the difference in wording into the margins of an early copy of Matthew, and then a subsequent scribe mistakenly included the marginal note in the text of Matthew. This kind of reader's note turned copying error has been seen before. Still, one has to wonder, if this had been a less striking change to our traditional picture of Jesus' death, would scholars have disregarded the best manuscripts of
Yeah,
Matthew's
there's too
gospel
many plot holes.
in
What's up,
favor of
Satan's little
this
helper? Sorry I
hypothetical?
didn't see your comment originally.
Father,
I don't know
forgive
what
them.
happened. For some reason, it
In a
didn't pop
supreme
up on
act
my
of
Restream
charity,
chat.
Jesus forgave his executioners as he hung
What's
from the
up,
cross.
Restream chat?
Father,
That's so
forgive them,
weird.
reads the gospel according to
All right, let me
Luke,
see if I see
for
it
they
on
know not
Twitch.
what they do. But was this originally part of
Yeah,
Luke's
I see it
gospel,
on.
or to
I
describe
see it
added
on the
later?
Twitch chat, but I don't see it on
Many
the
of our
Restream.
earliest and most reliable manuscripts do not contain
Weird.
this
It's
famous
normally the other
line.
way around.
The line is absent from the only papyrus we have for Luke, called P75. The question scholars must ask then is whether it's more likely that scribes would erase the line from Luke or add it in. Some scholars believe scribes gave the line to Jesus in imitation of the martyr Stephen's similar statement in Acts 7. Other scholars argue that scribes might have removed the line because it was important for them to maintain the Jewish people were guilty of deicide, that is, the murder of God. Since this allegation was used to justify centuries of anti-Semitism, scribes might have been uneasy with Jesus forgiving the Jewish people from the cross. The question of the verse's authenticity continues to divide scholars, and each editorial team charged with updating and developing new Bible translations makes their own decision about whether or not to include it.
I'm going to take a quick travel over to the turtle lair just because I want to see what's going on here.
The oldest surviving visual depiction of Jesus' crucifixion is probably a graffito from the Palatine Hill in Rome. Remarkably, this 2nd or 3rd century representation of Jesus' crucifixion is not some pious portrait by an early Christian, but a caricature meant to mock the beliefs of Christ's followers. The image depicts a crucified man with the head of a donkey. The spectator stands below the crucified man with an arm upraised. The caption reads, Alexamenos, presumably the spectator's name, worships his God.
I guess there's just all the secret things you can unlock.
A Christian named Alexamenos for worshiping someone who was crucified.
Yeah, this game just got a lot of that arcade vibe, a lot of stuff to do. It's really fun, really fun.
The donkey's head further suggests that this graffiti was
I'm trying to convince guys from my motorcycle club from GTA to play this game.
Suggested, I guess jokingly, that a donkey lived in the Holy of Holies, the center of the Jerusalem temple, to which no one but the high priest was
you guys got PS4s out there, you should play this too.
There is 2nd and 3rd century
Look at you dummies. Look at you dummies. Your weapon's too heavy for you.
Accused of donkey worship. Alexamenos' identity is a mystery, but it's probably Jesus on the cross in this piece of ancient graffiti. The longest ending of Mark. We discussed earlier the abrupt original ending to Mark and the 2 most common endings that appear in the manuscript tradition. But there is an even longer, stranger, and more rare ending. Codex Washingtonianus, a 4th or 5th century Greek Bible, contains the so-called longest ending of Mark, also named the Freer.
There's a lot of these
C.L. Freer, the American art collector, purchased the manuscript and brought it to the Smithsonian. This manuscript contains the longer ending of Mark, like the majority of manuscripts. But after verse 14, when Jesus reappears to the 11 disciples for the first time, the disciples give an explanation for why they doubted the women's testimony. The present age, the disciples explained, was under the power of Satan, who prevented people from knowing the truth. Jesus rebukes them, saying he overcame the power of Satan so that his followers could believe. After this paragraph-length exchange, the longer ending of Mark resumes as found in other manuscripts. This is, unfortunately, the only manuscript that preserves this longest ending of Mark. But we know this story wasn't unique to Codex Washingtonianus. Jerome, a 4th century Christian scholar, partially quotes the story and says it appeared in many Greek manuscripts. Calling out to Helios. Mark reports Jesus' cry of dereliction in Aramaic before giving it in Greek. The Aramaic is transposed Eloi, Eloi, meaning my God, The bystanders, Mark tells us, assume Jesus is calling out to Elijah and wait to see if anything will happen. In one old Latin manuscript, Codex Bobiensis, the transcribed Aramaic is rendered Heli, Heli. Amazingly, the bystanders in this text do not assume Jesus is calling out to Elijah, but to Helios, the Greek god of the sun. In this 4th century copy of Mark, then, the witnesses of the crucifixion suspect that Jesus called upon a pagan deity.
Am I in a party?
Did someone steal the body? The charge that someone stole Jesus' body goes all the way back to the New Testament.
My bad.
The Jewish elders and priests, according to the Gospel of Matthew, bribed the Roman soldiers to tell the people that Jesus' disciples stole the body. And this story is still told, Matthew says, among the Jewish people until this day. Justin's dialogue with Trypho, a 2nd century dialogue between a Christian and a Jew, attributes this argument to its Jewish speaker. This might reflect the line of argument used by 2nd century Jewish thinkers, but it's difficult to say since the author might have just based it on the Gospel of Matthew. There is another hint of such a charge in the New Testament. When Mary sees the risen Jesus in the Gospel of John, she mistakes him for a gardener and says, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." The 4th Gospel thus points to the possibility that a third party might have taken Jesus' body away. Such an accusation, in fact, appears in an authentically Jewish anti-Christian text. The Toldet Yeshu is a late antique anti-gospel, satirizing the canonical gospels and expanding on anti-Christian polemics in the Talmud. According to this text, Jesus' body was moved by a gardener in order to prevent his disciples from stealing it. It is possible that the Toldet Yeshu is preserving a 1st or 2nd century Jewish critique of Christianity known to the author of John. But at the same time, it is possible that this anti-gospel is drawing on the idea of the disciples or someone stealing the body from the Gospel of John or the Gospel of Matthew. In the end, the only good evidence that anyone at the time suggested Jesus' body was stolen comes from Christian sources, though that is hardly surprising given how few non-Christian sources we have for anything about the life of Jesus.
Let's go.
Layer 5, apocryphal narratives.
Let's go.
Jesus, the shapeshifter. It's well known that the Quran denies that Jesus was crucified, but did you know that this idea was anticipated in several early Christian sources? The Quranic tradition appears in Surah 4, where the Jewish people are depicted as boasting that they had killed the Messiah, Jesus, the son of Mary. But they neither killed nor crucified him, the Quran retorts. It was only made to appear so. This is variously interpreted across Islamic traditions, but the mainstream view is that the Romans were fooled into crucifying someone other than Jesus. The idea of a substitute on the cross first appears in a Gnostic text discovered at Nag Hammadi. The second tractate of the great Seth reads, "Yes, they saw me, they punished me. It was another, their father, who drank the gall and the vinegar. It was not me. They struck me with the reed. It was another, Simon, who bore the cross on his shoulder. It was another upon whom they placed the crown of thorns. But I was rejoicing in the height over all the wealth of the archons and the offspring of their error, of their empty glory. And I was laughing at their ignorance, and I subjected all their powers. For as I came downward, no one saw me, for I was altering my shapes, changing from form to form." This text is characteristically difficult to interpret. Jesus claims that someone other than himself
I can do the rage out mode thing,
passion, including the gall he drank.
but I'm gonna like.
Irenaeus of Leon, who appears to have misattributed this text to a heretic named Basilides, interpreted it to mean that Simon was crucified instead of Jesus. Another parallel in the Gnostic Apocalypse of Peter describes the separation of the divine Christ from the earthly Jesus before the latter could be crucified. It's plausible that the author of Surah 4 in the Quran was influenced by these deviant early Christian traditions about the death of Jesus. Numerological significance.
I found another character. I think I gotta find
Ancient
them
Greek,
a bunch
the
of
language
times,
in which
and
the
then
Gospels
maybe
were
unlock
written,
them.
uses the same symbols for letters and numbers. Alpha is 1, beta is 2, etc. This allowed ancient readers to find numerological significance in names or hidden meanings in numbers. A good example of this is how Nero Caesar equals 666 in the Book of Revelation. It occurred to some early Christian leaders that the shape of the tau resembled a cross. The letter tau, moreover, is the symbol for 300. The cross thereby could be associated with the number 300. When early Christians found occurrences of the number 300 in the Jewish scriptures, they understood these as prefigurements of Jesus' death. This particular numerological argument appears in one of the earliest non-canonical Christian writings, the pseudonymous Epistle of Barnabas. Writing near the turn of the 2nd century, this author saw in the 300 men circumcised by the Jewish patriarch Abraham a symbol of the cross. My power, my power.
Unlock
We
the
already
power
discussed the
level 8.
various words attributed to Jesus in the canonical Gospels, but, there were more than 4 stories about Jesus circulating in the early centuries. The Gospel of Peter, an extra-canonical gospel that achieved some popularity in the 2nd century, portrays Jesus using his last breath to express a different sentiment. My power, says Jesus, you have forsaken me. The statement is obviously similar to the cry of dereliction used in Matthew and Mark, but instead of addressing God, Jesus speaks about his power. Early church historian Eusebius reports that some early Christians cited this gospel to justify their belief that the divine part of Jesus
not
separated from the
surprisingly
human
after all
part
those
as he was dying. Probably these Christians, called Docetus by their opponents, interpreted this statement as the human Jesus' cry of despair being abandoned by the divine Christ. It is possible, however, that this was an ancient misunderstanding of the gospel itself. A popular translation of the Jewish scriptures produced by Aquila rendered Psalm 22:1, my strength, my strength. The language of power or strength was an established
Are they all just ganging up on me right now? What?
Possibly, the Gospel of Peter is just a more pious rendering of Psalm 22, using power as a euphemism for God. Upside down crucifixion. Alright, this one isn't about Jesus, but rather about the crucifixion of one of his closest disciples. The apocryphal Acts of Peter reports that Peter was condemned to crucifixion on the charge of godlessness. When the soldiers begin to crucify him, Peter requests that he be crucified upside down. He then delivers a speech, apparently mid-crucifixion, about the symbolic significance of his inverted crucifixion. The position of his body, for instance, represents the natural birth of human beings, head first, down toward the earth. No doubt, most of this apocryphal Acts is legend.
Hang on one sec. Let me see what's going on with the party real fast. Oh, actually, there's really nobody in here. Alright, we're good. I'm out. Any other parties? Sacred and Friend. No, that's some stuff that I ever good.
But it may contain a nugget of truth. The 3rd century Latin apologist Tertullian was no fan of apocryphal Acts, and he believed that Peter was crucified. Origen, a half-century later, knows the tradition that Peter was crucified upside down. And we do, in fact, have reports of Roman soldiers crucifying their victims in all kinds of strange positions, including upside down. Josephus describes Roman soldiers under Titus crucifying Jews outside of Jerusalem in different positions for their own amusement. Additionally, Seneca specifically describes upside-down crucifixions. It is therefore possible that the apocryphal Acts of Peter preserves a memory of Peter's torture at the hands of callous Roman soldiers. The robbers' names. The robbers crucified with Jesus, we've already discussed, probably weren't thieves, and from a historical perspective, there's nothing more we can really say about them. Religious traditions, on the other hand, just abhor vacuums. As with so many other nameless figures in Jewish and Christian Bibles, these robbers eventually acquired names. An old Latin manuscript, Codex Colbertinus, names these robbers Zoetham on the right and Comma on the left, in the text of both Matthew and Mark. The Gospel of Nicodemus provides 2 alternative names, Demos for the penitent thief and Gestos for the impenitent. This pair of names is also found throughout the Coptic Orthodox tradition as early as the 4th century.
So
Finally,
weird.
The Syriac infancy gospel furnishes a
I guess
fuller
so,
narrative.
like, why not?
In this book, Mary, Joseph, and the infant Jesus are waylaid by robbers on their flight to Egypt. One robber named Titus persuades another named Dumachus to release the Holy Family. The former becomes the penitent thief, and the latter the impenitent. The walking, talking
Yeah, so they get
cross.
backstories.
The canonical
walking,
Gospels
talking
describe the
cross.
aftermath of Jesus' resurrection and some supernatural events surrounding the appearances of a risen Jesus, but none describe
Whoa.
the actual resurrection itself. Such a description can, however, be found in the aforementioned Gospel of Peter. Jewish leaders and Roman soldiers alike in this account stand guard at Jesus' tomb to prevent the disciples from stealing the body. Additionally, an entire crowd came from Jerusalem to see the sealed tomb. Then, on Saturday night, the beginning of the day after the Sabbath on the Jewish calendar, a voice sounded from heaven, the sky split open, and
I
2
should've
radiant
waited. I knew I
angels
should've
descended
waited.
before the tomb. The stone rolled away of its own volition, and then the 2 angels went in. When they were inside the tomb, those on
I was
guard
trying to
woke up
whack
everyone
the-
who was present.
Oh.
3 figures then come out, angels supporting Jesus in between them. The Gospel says that the heads of the angels reached the heavens, and the head of Jesus went beyond the heavens. Everyone's favorite detail comes next. Behind the 3 figures, the Gospel seems to say, came the cross itself. A voice from heaven asks the cross if it
he's
had
not
preached
quick
to
enough.
the
There it
dead,
is. I gotta like
and the
anticipate
cross
it a little
says
bit.
yes. Everyone present, the
See,
author
like,
assures
if I
us,
just
saw
press
the
it right
same
away, I
thing.
don't get it.
But Pilate,
All right.
at the request of the people,
I
ordered
need a
that
pizza. Give
no
me
one
that
ever
pizza.
admit it. And there it is, the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus iceberg. For most of their history, the story of Jesus' life and death, as well as other Christian narratives, were only investigated theologically. Certain things are just not to be questioned, people used to think. Lucky for those of us who are open to following the evidence wherever it leads, this is not the case in reputable academic institutions today. This means that information and ideas like those presented here are just a class, page turn, or click away for most of us. I, for one, am incredibly grateful to the critical scholars who have made that possible.
Yeah, seriously.
Now, remember that if you'd like to go even deeper into the resurrection story, hearing 2 scholars debate its historicity in probably the most thorough exchange on the topic available anywhere, click the link in the description and pinned comment to register for the event, Did the Resurrection of Jesus Really Happen? No matter when you sign up, you'll have permanent access to the all-day debate, and you'll be supporting my channel in the process, so thank you. Thanks for watching. I've been Drew of Genetically Modified Skeptic. A special thank you to Dr. Ian Mills and Dr. Bart Ehrman for making this video possible. Another thanks to my patrons for their constant love and support. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. As always, if you are an apostate in need, there are resources linked in the description to help you find community and mental health support. Remember to be kind to others in the comments, and until next time, stay skeptical.
Oh, come on.
Because he had blasphemed against
Nope.
God.
Nope.
If
Nope.
this man
Nope. Nope.
You got to know.
All right. Well.
I flew in from New York City this morning, so it's dinner time, actually. So I'm ready. You got dinner for me here. Thank you first for this invitation to come present. And I'm familiar with many of your names and faces, and I'm even close friends with some of you out there. What I wanted to do was put some issues on the table that I have not seen commonly discussed, and that I think they ought to be front and center for these next several days. Unfortunately, I missed Professor Weinberg's talk. I tried to get her. I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning in New York City to get here, and the best I could do was halfway through. I missed her talk completely, but I got half. You're forgiven. Okay. But I learned from informants that, in fact, we have some significant overlap in our discussion of Islam from 1,000 years ago. So forgive me if I repeat some of what you might have already heard, but I'm going to bring it out anyway because there's a broader context that I want to share with you. And I'm told I have full control here.
Pretty athletic move you did there, bud.
In case you're wondering, that's the Eagle Nebula.
Damn it.
One of the few photos.
Why did I do that? Whoa, man, double blast. Oh my goodness. Am I supposed to just can I get a
Arizona, and the shape of the eagle.
Oh, this is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Yeah,
barely
pizza,
discernible in
please,
this frame because the eagle is about 2 or 3 times the size of this, and the head of the eagle would be up here. So up here, and the wings off to the left and off to the right. Perhaps the most famous image of Hubble is a close-up of this zone right here, which has been variously be called the pillars of creation, God's fingers, and all sorts of other sort of religious references. People feel that way when they look at images of the cosmos, of course. I was always curious, though, that in the same universe you have things like the underbelly of a tarantula, and when magnified, no one thinks religious thoughts when they make those observations. When it's part of the same universe. So, but I'll get back to that in a few moments. So here, what I want to do is I want to highlight a few issues. And these are issues that came together for an essay I wrote that appeared in Natural History magazine, the Darwin issue. It was the opening of our Darwin exhibit that is now traveling. It's no longer there at the museum. But the Darwin issue collected together stories, articles on the relevance of evolution, not only as an important concept in biology, but an important concept in all of science. And I thought long and hard about how could I possibly contribute to this, because I don't know enough biology to be meaningful in that issue. And then I realized that there are elements of, in fact, the intelligent design movement that clearly there's a lot of teeth that members, people attending this workshop have put into that subject. And I asked myself, do I have anything to contribute to that? And I realized that I did. And so I want to sort of fill a niche that I think is left unfilled. Let's go through. Let me first start off with Ptolemy. I don't know if we know that he really looked like this, but Ptolemy, was one of the greatest scientists ever and most influential scientists. And his most important work is, of course, Al-Majest, which is Arabic for the greatest. And in it, he sort of codifies the geocentric universe. And this Earth-centered universe prevailed for centuries until Copernicus and Galileo turned that around. But what I want to call your attention to are notes.
Oh, I got an extra life added?
The margin of the manuscript of.
I wish I had 4, because then I would have gotten a 5.
Let me remind you that back then, you would look up at the night sky and the planets would move against the background star.
Damn it.
They would wander. That's what the word means in Greek, is wander.
Oh, at least I got extra life.
7 of these objects, the sun and moon included. And they would just kind of move. They'd go to the left, and then they'd slow down and pause, and then they'd back up, and then they'd reverse again. And this was a mystery. Complete mystery.
Oh, and I think you lose all your
thingies.
You like your supercharged moves or whatever.
Going up there was kind of okay and expected because that was the work of the gods. And we, being mortal down here on Earth, if you can't understand it, don't lose sleep over that fact. You perhaps never will. Now, Ptolemy has the best going explanation anyone has put forth with the epicycles and the like But nonetheless, this is the list.
Flyintist? God damn
known
it.
and unknown about how the machinery of the universe
I like
works,
the flyintist.
and he pens these words. Which
I
for me
must
are one
kill
of the most
him.
beautiful and
He's trying to
poetic
kill me.
References to the state of one's knowledge ever
Only
written.
one of us will live.
I know that I am mortal by nature and ephemeral. But when I trace at my
Oh,
pleasure
what the
the
hell
wanderings
is
to and from
this?
of the heavenly bodies,
Oh, come
I
on.
touch earth with my feet. I stand in the presence of Zeus himself and take my fill of ambrosia. And so therein is this emotional, he's got this
Come
sort
on,
of
really?
religious feeling at the limits of his knowledge. And this is a trend that will continue for thousands of years to follow this. At least 2,000 years to follow this. And you don't have, and this whole notion of intelligent design, this is intelligent design. This quote that I just read to you is Ptolemy invoking intelligent design. No, he's not trying to get that into the classroom. He's not, there's the politics of intelligent design in modern times. But what I think has been swept under the rug that we have to contend with as a community of people who are sort of truth seekers is the fact that some of the greatest minds that have preceded us
Right.
have done just this.
But not anymore.
That's fine. But we can go on. Who else do we have? Oh, Galileo, interesting case. Galileo was kind of an exception to this. We all know he was a deeply religious man, and a lot of the trouble he got into was because he was just kind of obnoxious, all right? He could have made nice with the Pope, and he did not. And of course, I'm paraphrasing. I mean, I'm
Trying to finish him.
that's the Reader's Digest version of what happened over that period. But let me share with you some lines that he wrote to Christina, who was the Grand Duchess of Tuscany. Some of these quotes you've heard before. But
God damn it. I was hoping to avoid going through this shit again. Oh!
The Bible tells
Whoa,
you
they're
how
coming.
to
I mean, all three now? What the hell?
That's one of the famous
The hell do I avoid that
quotes
shit?
attributed to Galileo. Another one is, I don't feel
he's getting
obliged to
desperate.
believe that the same God who has endowed us with senses, reason and
Got
intellect,
him.
has intended us to forego their use. And so
By
he
Baxter
was kind
Stockman, the
I see him as
flyintist.
one of the first to say, all right, if religion if there's any point and purpose to it, it's not to be to serve as a science textbook. Okay, so he was kind of the first to suggest
Cowabunga.
not to get rid of religion. Of course, like I said, he was a religious fellow.
Oh, come
himself.
on. What is this?
But it gets interesting when we get sort of philosophically interesting.
Uh-oh.
When we get to this gentleman, back up here, Sir Isaac Newton. Now, I don't know what you know of Isaac Newton, but everything I've read of his tells me that there's no greater genius to ever walk the surface of this earth. I'm just I don't know if you've ever felt that about anybody. I didn't feel that about anybody. You just read what this man wrote, okay? Line by line by line. This guy was plugged into the machinery of the universe. I think he's unimpeachably brilliant. Unimpeachably brilliant. And let me read again what we heard from Mike Shermer earlier. In Isaac Newton's writings, by the way, in his Principia, here's the page 1.
What? No. Oh, come on. I was trying to get away from that.
In it,
oh, come
he
on. Now you gotta move. You gotta move.
discovers the laws of motion, F equals ma, discover the laws of gravity.
It's just out here throwing bombs at people,
He
really?
did this all before he turned 26. And in this, when he talks about motion, there's no reference to God. When he talks about his two-body force that he deduced, this universal law of gravitation, there is no mention of God. It's just not anywhere there because he understood it. He was on top of it. He was there. Even though the understanding of the motions of the planets before he came along was given unto God because nobody understood it. Or nobody understood well enough to really believe that they had a full predictive handle on it in the way the universal law of gravitation supplied. And so what you have is Isaac Newton abandoning reference to God until he realizes that if all you do is calculate the two-body problem, here we have like the moon and Earth. Yes, he's got that calculated. Now you have the sun and the Earth. You got that. But wait a minute, now the Earth and the moon go around the sun, and sometimes we're close to Mars and sometimes we're not. And when it comes near Mars, there's a tug that's stronger there than in any other part in the orbit. And then it comes over here, and then Jupiter tugs. And all these mini tugs. And so he's got to do this two-body problem for Earth, the moon, Earth and the sun, Earth Moon and Mars, Earth, Moon, Mars, and Jupiter, and it becomes a rapidly complex problem. And he realizes that, in fact, applying this simple sort of approach to calculating the stability of the solar system, he finds he can't stabilize the solar system. He can't account for how we have stayed this way for as long as what was possibly necessary from the beginning of the universe. And so what does he say? He's at his limits. He's at his limits. And so you read but God is nowhere until you get to the general Sholem. And then he says the 6 primary planets. Back then there were 6 planets, okay? Now there's 8, in case you haven't been keeping track. Even if you thought there were 9, there are now 8. The 6 primary planets are revolved about the sun in circles concentric with the sun, and with motions directed towards the same parts and almost in the same plane. He's got the whole picture now, and he's trying to sort of account for that. But he can't just simply doing 2-body calculations, certainly not without a computer or without a new kind of mathematics. He says, but it is not to be conceived. But is it not to be conceived that mere mechanical causes could give birth to so many regular motions? This
yeah, you go back to 3. You lose them if you lose your life. I wanted to check that time. It sucked losing 3, but now I know. I wasn't paying attention in the past.
Invoking intelligent design at the limits of his knowledge. And I want to put on the table the fact that you have school systems wanting to put intelligent design into the classroom, but you also have the most brilliant people who ever walked this earth doing the same thing. And so it's a deeper challenge than simply educating the public. It's deeper than, as you know, by the books written by our scientific colleagues that do take these deeply resonant and charitable positions towards their religious beliefs. Maybe the real question here. Let me back up for a moment. You know, we've all seen the data. 40%, there's 90 whatever percent of the West or the American public believes in a personal God that responds to their prayers. And then you ask, well, what is that percentage for scientists? Averaged over disciplines, it's about 40%. And then you say, how about the elite scientists, members of the National Academy of Sciences? An article on those data recently in Nature, it said 85% of the National Academy reject a personal God. And then they compare it to 90% of the public. You know, that's not the story there. They missed the story. The story. What that article should have said is, how come this number isn't 0? That's the story. Okay? So my esteemed colleague here, Professor Krauss here says all we have to do is make a scientifically literate public. Well, when you do, how can they do better than the scientists themselves in their percentages of who is religious and who isn't? That's kind of unrealistic, I think. So there's something else going on that nobody seems to be talking about. That as you become more scientific, yes, the religiosity drops off, but it asymptotes. It asymptotes not at 0. It asymptotes at some other level, so they should be the subject of everybody's investigation, not the public. I'm telling you. So it's not 85% reject, it's at 15%.
Except like I said, bro, it's that 15%. What is up with them 15%?
That we can't just sweep under the rug.
Yeah, that's these guys we see in the apologetics community. I think intelligent design is gaining traction. The thing is, they're in the wrong. They take this shit the wrong way. Like, I don't know.
So let me try to go quickly. If you don't think, I think Newton is.
I think a lot of them just come in with biases that they're trying to confirm.
And I'm not alone in feeling.
And they're kind of in scientific denial.
In Cambridge, and he's through the open doorway there.
But I'd love to see a study on it.
Statue. He's without his curls here. I was deeply upset by that. I thought he was like really trendy with his long hair, but apparently that was probably just a wig at all times. You look at the base of the statue.
Let's go. We got to go out with a bang.
Genius of all who have ever
Y'all gonna kill me. I'm taking my things.
Intellect than this man, and so I'm not alone in this sentiment.
Who? General Track, General of the Granite.
So, well, let's move on because there's more to talk about here. We don't have to stop at Newton. Let's go to Christian Huygens. All right, brilliant science. I mean, he was great at chemistry, biology, physics, math. a Dutch scientist, and
man.
he died the year that this work was published. One of my favorites.
He's about to unleash some minions.
Science writing.
He's got to have
and
minions.
it's Cosmotheros, which is
Yep,
an exploration on the likelihood of there being life on the known planets, using the available knowledge of the day.
Minions.
So, for example, they knew that. By the way, Huygens was the first to identify Saturn's ring as a ring. If I got that right, Carolyn, is that correct?
Damn.
Oh no, I thought he was the first to calculate that it would be a ring. He was then Huygens would be the first to observe it. Okay. We have Madam Saturn here in the room, in case you don't know. Okay. My colleague Carolyn Porco, who we'll be hearing from later.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But
That's
anyhow,
good.
so Huygens, brilliant fellow, and one of the probes on the Cassini spacecraft was called Huygens, a European probe that descended to the surface of Titan. And so he's an important figure in the history of science. So what does he say in his writings? Well,
Got
look at the
him.
year
Let's
1696.
get it.
Gravity was well known.
It's been such a
laws
good
of
night
motion
at
were
this
well
game.
known. Newton was quite influential well before the turn of the century there. And so when he talks
What is
about
this?
the orbits of the planets, it's done. Talks about the moons of Jupiter, done. Talks about the new rings around Saturn.
There's
done.
more?
It's all fine. But when he talks about biology and life, something that's not well understood then or today, boom, there goes his references to God. But references to God were nowhere else in those writings. Nowhere else. He says, I suppose nobody would deny, but that there's somewhat more of contrivance, somewhat more of miracle in the production and growth of plants and animals than in lifeless heaps of inanimate bodies. For the finger of God and the wisdom of divine providence is in them, much more clearly manifested than in the other. He doesn't say that about the orbits. We're done with the orbits, as Mike Shermer had noted. We're done. He's in a place where nobody really has the answer. So he invokes, this is intelligent design once again. Pure out, flat and simple. So, you know this story. I have to tell it because it's just great. All right? So Laplace, Pierre Simon de Laplace, at the end of the 18th century, wrote a 5-volume tome on celestial mechanics. A brilliant piece of work. It's there. It weighs a lot on the shelf. And what it does is it takes Newton's laws of gravity,
Pizza time.
brings them into a full expression with the hammer of calculus. Okay? He brings all the armament of mathematics to bear on the laws of physics that were put forth by Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton only touched on them. They were not fully developed. And in this work, he demonstrates, he further develops something that had been percolating in the mathematical community, but he develops, and one might even say perfects, a branch of math we would call perturbation theory, where instead of pulling your hair out saying, well, how do you calculate this pair of forces and this pair and this pair, and all the equations go to hell, in perturbation theory, it allows you to systematically and reliably calculate the effect of a small tug in the presence, a series of small tugs in the presence of singular big tugs. And that's kind of what's going on in most of the solar system. And when you do that, and you do that properly, you can demonstrate, notwithstanding the effects of chaos, which have other timescales related to them, you can demonstrate that, in fact, the solar system was stable beyond the predictions of Isaac Newton. So, he figures this out, does not invoke God, because he figured it out. And in a story that may be apocryphal, but I see more in support of it than against it, this time coincides, of course, with the era of Napoleon being French, and Laplace being French. No translation necessary. Napoleon, if you visited his library, it's not just sort of books of world history and battles, it's engineering books, it's physics books. This man wanted to know where his cannonballs would land, all right? He was much more than just sort of a lucky general. He was into
This is kind of cool.
the
Like
physics,
this
the
thing is,
engineering, and the
oh
material
man, and then it
science.
just flies in.
And so he immediately summoned
Oh
up the
man,
5-volume
oh
production
man,
of Laplace.
oh this is like
read it
some
from cover to
Megatron
cover,
shit right
called in
here.
Laplace and said,
This
"Sir,
thing
I
is
have the exact
crazy.
quote here."
And then it comes back and then it does this shit for a while. Oh, this is
Napoleon asked
crazy.
him what role God played in the construction and regulation of the heavens.
Oh.
This is kind of like
That's a
what
punch.
Newton would ask, right? Laplace replies, "Sir, I had no need for that hypothesis. And
Damn
so
it!
what
I knew I was gonna
concerns me
lose all
now
my
is,
shit.
even if you're as brilliant as Newton, you reach a point where you start basking
Oh,
in the
I can
majesty
throw
of God,
dudes into
and then
him.
your discovery stops.
I should have
It just
unleashed all
stops.
my
You're kinda no good anymore
heat
for
on it when
advancing
I
that
had the
frontier.
chance the first time.
Waiting for
I
somebody
should get
else
used to
come
doing that
behind you
early instead of
who doesn't
late.
have God on the brain, and who
I usually
says,
try to
"That's a
save it so I
really
can like
cool
use it to
problem, I wanna
finish off the
solve it."
boss,
They
but I
come
should
in and
use it
solve
early
But look at the time delay.
to make sure I
This was
get it off on the
100-year time
boss.
delay. And the math that's in perturbation theory is like crumbs for Newton. He could have come up with that. The guy invented calculus just on a dare, practically. When someone asked him, what, you know, Ike, how come planets orbit in ellipses and not some other shape? And he couldn't answer that.
If you time
He goes home
the
for 2 months,
cannons
comes
right there
back,
too,
out
you'll get them
comes
too.
Integral differential calculus.
Got to use the
You need that
environment.
to answer that question. And so this is the kind of mind we were dealing with Newton. He could have gone there, but he didn't. He didn't. His religiosity stopped him. And so we're left with the realization, of course, that intelligent design, while real in the history of science, while real in the presence of sort of philosophical drivers, is nonetheless a philosophy of ignorance. And so, regardless of what our political agenda is, all you have to say is, science is a philosophy of discovery, intelligent design is a philosophy of ignorance. That's all. I don't need to see whether, have you discovered anything lately? If not, get out of the science classroom. But I'm not going to say, don't teach this, because it's real, it happened. So I don't want people to sweep it under the rug, because if you do, you're neglecting something fundamental that's going on in people's minds when they confront things they don't understand. And it happens to the greatest of the minds, as it happens to everyone else, many, if not most other people in the public.
I still got a life, I'm good.
Blow through some last set of slides here.
This is a tough guy. It's been a tough level though.
Attention that we all know.
I don't even know if it's over because I thought it was over the last time.
Intuitively, whether or not you've thought about it explicitly. You go around the world and you find times and places where nations have excelled.
By Chrome Dome.
There's a birth of that.
All right, I think we actually, there we go. Episode 13 clear.
Sometimes it drops off, and sometimes they hang on.
That was crazy.
And so you can ask the culture of that. What was going on in that nation to support those discoveries? And then what happened when they ended? And so I call that sort of naming rights. If you were there first and you did it best, you name things.
Channel 6 van, oh man, it goes by so fast.
Country, in the United States, was like going gangbusters after the Second World War. And the discovery of atomic elements, look at the periodic table. There's berkelium, californium, you know, we got half the United States up there in the upper, heavier elements of the periodic table. Am I right there, Sir Weinberg? Okay, I don't wanna That's not because the world liked California or Berkeley. It's because the work was done here. It's because there was an effort to excel in just those subjects. And it shows up in other ways. Well, I'll give you just briefly.
I was trying to time the jump.
Part of the naming rights is that you don't have to name it.
Damn it.
So, for example, while we didn't invent the
I guess I can
internet,
probably
we
swat these
exploited
things.
it here in America. We did that sort of first and best. And so your email address does not end in .us.
Oh, I do have 5 lives now when I start. That's nice.
We don't. Okay?
Peace out, bro. Peace out, bro.
It's simple, but it's the consequence of being there first and doing it better than anyone had done it before. Do you know that the British postage stamp is the only postage stamp in the world that does not identify the country of origin?
The foot is everywhere, and so are the Ninja Turtles.
So why should they have to say what country it is? It's their invention. Okay? Check them out. It's just the facts of this. The constellations of the night sky. It's the Greek and Roman, and it's lasted to this time because they did a really good job thinking that stuff up. All the mythologies of the heavens, that really stuck with us. All right, so I'm going to make a larger point. Not to get gratuitous on you here, but September 11th, 2001, as we all know, this was going on in New York City. This is the view outside of my window. I live 4 blocks from ground zero. Excuse me, this is the corner of the building in which I live. I went outside to get this view. I was at the time judging whether I should go collect my daughter, who was in an elementary school 2 blocks north of the North Tower. North is to the right in this picture. So I want to get a closer view with a highly magnified zoom lens to see.
That was badly timed.
While that was happening, the plane flew into the South Tower. And so no one was thinking terrorism until the second one was hit. The first one was just sort of a bad tragedy. And so these are just 3 frames from my camcorder. This is at t equals 0. This is 1 second, well, like actually a fraction of a second. Plane was moving probably 500 miles an hour.
What am I supposed to do? Like, am I supposed to just stand in front of that thing so I can hit it?
That is 50 stories tall.
That's crazy.
This is New York City, people. So tall buildings are kind of, they're just all over the place. And that's just a hotel, a 50.
Can I get a pizza around here?
The towers are foreshortened because they're...
Let's see if I got to stand in the way of this thing to deal with it.
I put these up because a few days after this, President Bush, I don't remember where he said this, on the steps of the White House, in the Rose Garden or at the Capitol, in an attempt to distinguish we from they, the terrorists who flew these planes into the buildings and into the, went down in Pennsylvania and at Washington, to distinguish we from they, he loosely quotes a phrase out of the
How'd I do
Bible
that?
by saying, our God is the God who named the stars. Now, this is before I was on his Rolodex, okay? Because I could have helped him out there. The fact is, of all the stars that have names, 2/3 of them have Arabic names. So this was not, I don't think, his intent with that message. Okay? While the constellations are Greek and Roman, the names are Arabic, all right? And the list just goes on and on and on and on. And so where does this come from? How does this happen? How do you get stars named with Arabic names? How does this happen? And it happens because, of course, because, hang on, just catching up with myself here. Okay? It happens because there was this particularly fertile period that Professor Weinberg duly discussed. And around that period, that 300-year period, the intellectual center of the world was Baghdad. Baghdad. It was completely open to all visitors, all travelers, Jews, Christians, doubters, which today we might call atheists. They were all there, exchanging ideas. All of them. And it was that period where you had the advances in, like, engineering and biology and medicine and mathematics. All right? The numerals are called what? Arabic numerals. Now, you ever stop and think about that? You know, who as in America, do we take pause at this? Why are they called Arabic numerals? Okay, they fully exploit the discovery of the zero, create a whole field called algebra, itself an Arabic word. Algorithm is an Arabic word. All this is going on, and it's all traceable, not to some long 1,000-year tradition in Islam. It's traceable to this 300-year period. This 300-year period. And then, so they had naming rights. The most expensive, beautifully carved astrolabes come out of this period. There's a great collection of these at the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, if you ever want to check them out. So navigation, celestial navigation, all of this is traceable to this period. And so something happened. And what happened, as was previously described, I was told it, and forgive me for repeating from what you might have heard, 12th century kicks in, and then you get the influence of this scholar, Al-Ghazali, all right? And so out of his work, you get the philosophy that mathematics is the work of the devil. And nothing good can come of that philosophy. That, combined with other sort of codification, philosophical codifications of what Islam was and would become, the entire intellectual foundation of that enterprise collapsed, and it has not recovered since. Over that period, all these books were translated into Arabic on a scale not seen since then. And so why am I even going here? Because I'm trying to explain to you.
Oh man, another one of these messed up turtles.
You fast forward. The dangers here is that you fast forward to 21st century America.
Oh, what is that?
What influences are we feeling now? Because that period, that naming period in Islam stopped and it never recovered. Because the way of thinking.
See, I gotta
about
spend
the
all these before
world,
he kills me. Because if he kills you, then you lose him.
Revelation.
But now I spend them all, so if I lose a life,
okay,
I don't lose any of the
so I fast
super
forward
attacks.
to the 21st century, and what do you find? You get things like this. Okay, This is in America. All right? So now, what I find interesting is it's a level of passion that it requires to actually do it. You got to, like, pay for this, okay? And it means a lot of people pissed off at the Big Bang.
All right, I really appreciate everybody. It's been a really awesome night. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning where I'm at, so I should go to bed. I'm going to chill for a little bit, eat, watch some wrestling, and go to sleep. I want to thank everybody for watching the show earlier. I did on the Jay Bundy channel. If you missed it, check it out, Jay Bundy on YouTube. Otherwise, again, I want to thank everybody for all the follows on YouTube and all the subscribes on YouTube and all the follows on Twitch. In the name of the Darwin, the Dawkins, and the Christopher Hitchens, signs bless all of you. Have a good night. I'll see you next time.
She got that sweet juice, Minute Maid, summer vibe, that lemonade. Take a sip, blowing purple clouds, taste like lemon haze. Conversations back and forth like damn, we could go on for days. Looking